She was born in secret. No hospital. No midwife, no record. In the back of a car, somewhere in England, in the first days of January 2023. Her mother was an aristocrat, the kind of family with historic ties to the royal family, old money, a name that carried weight. Her father was a convicted rapist who had spent years in an American prison. The baby had no name registered anywhere, no birth certificate, no existence officially at all. Her parents called her Victoria. She was dead within weeks, and when police finally found her, body on 2 months after she was born, she was in a shopping bag, in a disused shed in Brighton. This is the story of Constance Marten, Mark Gordon, and the baby that nobody was supposed to know existed. Constance Marten grew up in a world most people only read about. Old English aristocracy, country houses, a family with connections stretching back generations, including historic ties to the royal family. The kind of upbringing where everything is provided and almost nothing is expected to go wrong. And then in 2016, she met Mark Gordon. Gordon was American, older. He had served time in the United States for rape. He was, by almost any measure, exactly the kind of person Constance's family would have spent considerable effort keeping her away from. She cut off her family almost entirely after they got together. What followed was years of moving constantly, no fixed address, no stability, a relationship that court documents would later describe as involving serious domestic violence. In 2019, while Constance was pregnant with their third child, Gordon either pushed her or caused her to fall from a window during an argument. She suffered serious injuries. He didn't call for help. By the time Victoria was conceived, Constance and Mark already had 4 children together. All 4 had been taken into care. A judge had ruled in January 2022 that the couple consistently put their relationship before everything else, including the well-being of their own children. So when Constance became pregnant again, in late 2022, they made a decision they would run. In late December 2022, Constance and Mark disappeared. Heavily pregnant, no fixed address, no plan beyond staying hidden. They moved across England, city to city, trying to stay one step ahead of authorities, who would inevitably take this baby too if they ever found them. In early January 2023, somewhere on that journey, Victoria was born. No hospital, no medical assistance, just the 2 of them and a newborn in the middle of winter. Days later, police in Lancashire found their car burning on the M61 motorway near Bolton. Inside the vehicle, investigators found a placenta. They realized immediately what had happened. A baby had been born, and the baby was missing. The search that followed lasted 53 days. A nationwide manhunt. Police appeals. Enormous media coverage. The entire country watching. Constance and Mark, meanwhile, were moving. Sleeping rough, staying in tents, crossing the country through some of the coldest weeks of the year, with a newborn, in a tent. In January in England, the prosecution would later describe Victoria's death as inevitable. That from the moment her parents chose that tent in those conditions, the outcome was already decided. Constance and Mark were eventually found and arrested in Brighton on February 27, 2023. Victoria was not with them. Police asked where the baby was. They said nothing. For 2 days they said nothing. On March 1st, after an extensive search of the areas where the couple had been sleeping rough, investigators found Victoria in a disused shed, in a shopping bag. Her body badly decomposed. She had been dead for weeks. Pathologists, even after extensive examination, could not determine with certainty exactly how she died. The prosecution argued she had either died from hypothermia, the cold of the tent proving fatal for a newborn, or had been accidentally smothered while co-sleeping. Constance maintained in court that Victoria had died accidentally, that she had fallen asleep while holding her. What is certain is this: a newborn baby spent the coldest weeks of winter in a flimsy tent, without adequate clothing, without medical care, without anyone outside knowing she existed, and she died. The legal process that followed was, by any measure, extraordinary. 2 trials, years of delays, bizarre outbursts in court. A judge frequently described as exasperated by proceedings that seemed designed to obstruct and delay at every turn. At the first trial, the jury could not reach a verdict on the manslaughter charge. Constance and Mark were convicted of child cruelty, concealing the birth of a child, and perverting the course of justice, but the central charge of manslaughter was unresolved. The Crown Prosecution Service sought a retrial. At the second trial, with fresh expert evidence explaining in precise detail the conditions Victoria had been exposed to, the jury convicted both of them. Gross negligence manslaughter, both sentenced to 14 years. Gordon with an additional 4 years on extended license. Constance will not be released until she has served at least 2/3 of her sentence. The judge, in sentencing them, said what they had done to baby Victoria could only be described as neglect. There's a detail in this case that I keep returning to. When Constance and Mark were arrested in Brighton, the end of a 53-day manhunt, the entire country watching, they didn't tell police where Victoria was. They knew she was dead. They knew where she was. And for 2 days they said nothing. Whatever their reasons, fear, shock, something harder to name, 2 days passed while police searched frantically for a baby who was already gone. And she was in a shopping bag, in a shed, 3 miles from where they were sitting. Constance Marten is now appealing her conviction. Her 4 other children, the ones taken into care before Victoria was born, have been adopted. They will grow up without knowing most of this story. That is in some ways the kindest possible outcome for them. Victoria lived for weeks. She was held by her mother. She was in a tent in the South Downs in January, which is cold and wet and miserable even for adults with proper equipment. She had none. The prosecution said she would still be alive if her parents had simply not begun camping in that tent. That's the thing about this case that makes it so hard to look away from. It wasn't a moment of violence. It wasn't rage or cruelty in the ordinary sense. It was a choice made over weeks, sustained through the coldest part of winter, to keep a baby hidden from the world at any cost, and the cost was Victoria. Constance Marten came from a world of privilege and connection and every possible advantage. Mark Gordon came from a world of violence and conviction and a pattern of behavior that had been documented across 2 continents. Together, they built something that nobody outside them could fully reach. A closed system with its own logic, its own rules, its own desperate conviction that staying hidden was worth whatever it cost. It cost everything. Victoria was found in a shopping bag in a shed in Brighton. She was a few weeks old. She deserved a name on a birth certificate. She deserved a coat. She deserved to be warm. If this case stayed with you, and if it should, subscribe to Cold Trails. Every week we follow the cases that reveal something larger than the crime itself. The trails that went cold, but never disappeared. I'll see you in the dark.